What's going on, guys? Kyle Cardoza here. Today, we're at my internship at WBZ CBS Boston. We're going to be talking to several reporters, several anchors, and some producers about what's really important in making it in the news industry. Stay tuned. I'm here with Liam Martin, who is a news anchor for CBS Boston. Now, Liam, what does it mean to you to be, a news anchor, especially for such an elite company like CBS?
It is a dream come true.
Yeah.
When I started, Boston was where I wanted to end up, and I kind of just did what most people do. Worked in a small market, worked my way up, eventually got to Boston, reported in the field for 3 years, and then I had the opportunity to come to WBZ and anchor, and it's just been everything I had hoped it would be to report in my hometown.
How did you discover this passion?
It took me a little while. There are some people who know when they're in high school or before that this is what they want to do. That was not the case for me. I went to college, studied political science, was very interested in that. And then I worked right out of college in New York City for a startup internet company.
Okay.
I did some finance stuff. I did some work for the government. I kind of bounced around. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I always had an interest in politics, news, and sports. And so after about a year of living in New York and trying to figure out what I wanted to do, I decided this is what I was going to do. This was the perfect job for having that mix of passions.
Yeah.
And so I ended up getting my graduate degree at Northwestern in journalism. Did that for a year and then got my first job.
Well, I always really aspired to be a television news journalist from the time I would say I was about 12 or 13 years old. I just came from a family that were real news consumers. They loved journalism. I had grandparents that wrote for the Boston Post, which was one of 8 newspapers in Boston 100 years ago.
Wow, that's amazing.
So my mother came from newspaper people, and my father was a doctor and extremely well-read. We would sit around the dinner table at night talking about news and events and politics. And so I could see it was important to them, and I was always really fascinated by it. And as I got older, of course, it was sort of the heyday when I was a kid of television news, where the 3 stations in Boston, they were it. And the 3 networks on television long before cable news coverage. So, and my parents would point out that local TV news in Boston was the best local news in the country.
Yeah.
Because it's a very unusual news market. And you have so much here. The universities, hospitals, politics, sports. It has everything. 9 times out of 10, when there's a national story, there's always a Boston angle to that story. And there are so many influential people and intellects who live here. So, as a matter of fact, when I thought about getting into TV news, I really wanted to work in Boston TV news.
That's
I never
amazing.
really wanted to go to a network or anywhere else. This was where I wanted to work.
Wow, and you landed it.
And I did. I
There
did.
we go. Awesome.
I took kind of a different route than most people. The other thing that I knew about myself, just life works out differently for everybody. And I had met my husband at Boston College. We were both undergraduates there.
Oh, nice.
We got married in our early 20s, which was unusual.
Oh, okay.
When people started to get married older. And once we were married, we sort of had the whole discussion about having kids, and we sort of thought, let's do it sooner rather than later. If we know we're going to have kids, why put it off?
Why wait? Yeah.
Let's be young parents and do it. So I actually stayed home full time.
Oh, wow.
My children. I had 4 children from my mid-20s to my early 30s in 6 years. So I was a full-time stay-at-home mother for about 9 years before I started to head back to work.
Wow.
And so through the help of a friend, I put a tape together. I started first at the cable news operation that was in Worcester at the time. And I was lucky enough that while I was there, New England cable news kind of absorbed them. So then I knew I'd be seen on the air in Boston.
Yeah.
And after I was on New England cable news for a couple of months, the news director here at WBZ called me. And I've been here since 2002.
Wow, congratulations.
Yeah,
That's
thanks.
awesome.
I loved telling stories. I loved writing stories. I loved reading. And the idea that I could go out and interview people who knew about something that might be totally foreign to me, and then tell their story, or the story of whatever it was they wanted to talk about, was really appealing to me. And I also love the idea that every day would be a little different. The idea of going to a job where I'd go into a cubicle every day and do something, that didn't appeal to me. I wanted to be out. Now, as an anchor, I'm usually in, but for a long time, I got to do both more often, and I loved the dynamic nature of it.
I think I like the changing nature of it. I like the variety, that we're always dealing with something different each day. I like the storytelling aspect of it. I like working with both the video, the pictures, and the sound together, as well as the writing, to try and put something together that tells a good story and is interesting, hopefully, to people.
Yeah.
And I'll just like being a part of a bigger enterprise.
What would you say to an incoming college freshman or even a graduating college senior about finding a job, about going from a smaller market to a larger market?
That first job is just, you got to have a demo reel.
Yeah.
And so get an internship, do what you've done, try to get out in the field so that you can build a little bit of a resume. And you have to be a go-getter. You have to be willing to say to a reporter in the market where you're interning, or one of the managers, hey, can I get in front of the camera today and shoot a stand-up? Can I retract the story that you just did? Can I get on the anchor desk at some point and maybe talk to the camera for a bit and record that? Do whatever you have to do to build that demo reel that you can at least show that first market, I'm comfortable on camera, I know how to do this, I know the structure of the job, and intern, build the demo reel, and then apply everywhere. Be willing to go anywhere for your first job.
Yeah.
My first job was Lansing, Michigan.
Oh, wow.
And I had never, I guess I had been to Michigan when I was a boy, but I definitely didn't think I was going to end up in Michigan. I was there for 3 years.
Wow, really?
So a lot of times you're there for, your first job, you're there for a year and a half, 2 years, depending on how big your first market is. But I got there, I was there for a year, met my wife. She was finishing her PhD, so I stayed. And I just spent 3 years really trying to hone the craft, get better at my job, and then was able to go from Lansing to Boston.
Okay.
So I didn't have to do the middle step because I was there for 3 years.
Yeah, so you basically got all that footage right there and came over here.
Exactly.
You always want to get to a bigger market. I would say the most important things to learn are, again, you can't get that comfort level until you just have a number of reps under your belt. You need to get into as many different situations as possible. Breaking news, a big story, knowing how to kind of calibrate your personality for the viewer. I think the best thing you learn, is that people don't want you to be perfect. They really do want you to be yourself, which sounds really trite, but authenticity is really the most important thing when you're on camera. I think especially as you get to a bigger and bigger market, if you're in a really serious situation where you're conveying really important information to people, during a hurricane, where people's lives might potentially be in danger, or like we did here the day of the Boston Marathon bombings. That is when the rubber meets the road, and people who are viewers are turning you on because they trust you to get it right and just talk to them like a grown-up and tell them what's going on.
Tell it to them
and be able to tell it to them straight. And we're working to get information and get this to you. This is really important. To me, that is what you can only learn by doing. And Bob Schieffer, the sort of sage of CBS News, always says, anchors don't get paid to read the news. Anchors get paid for when everything goes wrong. Right? The video doesn't run, or the story isn't there, or a mistake is made. Being able to come back from that, and explain to the viewer that, hey, that just happened, but we're going to fix it, and we'll be right back. That getting that kind of comfort level that the viewer really just wants to hear from who you are. You can't know everything. You can't be everybody. All you can do is bring yourself and what you have learned in terms of amassing information to get at people in a clear, concise, professional manner. And, usually, it's very subjective. People like the cut of your jib or not.
Yeah,
we all know it, right? We
Yeah.
all know the people on air we like to watch. Or other people that we turn as soon as we see them,
It's either they like you or they...
That's hard to control. All you can control
Is yourself. Yeah, okay.
So this is where I get to pass on advice that someone gave me, which is know what you don't know. So I guess I have 2 bits of advice. Know what you don't know and take every opportunity you can get, especially if it makes you uncomfortable. I think as a cub reporter, I was terrified to admit that there were a lot of things I didn't know or didn't understand. I wasn't paying property taxes, so when I'd have to do stories on property tax initiatives, I'd be like, yeah, property taxes, nobody wants to pay those. Well, they're vital. And I think I would have saved myself a lot of time and a lot of hand-wringing if I had just said to the person I was interviewing, I don't pay property taxes myself because I rent an apartment, so tell me how that works. Like, just being willing to say, like, I don't know. Because nobody expects you to know everything, but when you're 21 or 22 years old, you feel like, oh man, I don't know anything. And, the more you can turn to someone and say, explain that to me, the more they open up and the more you learn. And then I would say, take every opportunity you can, because that's where the learning curve is steep, but so beneficial.
Yeah.
Get into situations where you really don't know and you have to figure it out, because the experiences you have and the mistakes, let's call it, that you'll make in that first market or at that first job are so valuable. People in those settings are very forgiving. If you're earnest and you're careful, you're still going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
But if you care about what you're doing and people see that, you really do have some leeway.
Yeah.
And years later, when you're in a larger market, there won't be that forgiveness. So, to the extent that you can make the mistakes early and learn from them, you are way better off than trying to be perfect at your job, not making any mistakes and then discovering later that you really don't know how to do something because you never had that moment.
Yeah, okay.
That was a really long-winded answer, but...
Yeah, so fail early, because failing early teaches you, essentially.
Yeah, and later you will laugh about it.
Yeah.
I mean, a colleague at my first station, I still laugh about the fact that because I didn't have any B-roll to cover up a story about logging or tree removal, that I put the camera out the car window and just drove for like a quarter of a mile. So it was just all these trees going by.
Yeah.
And I remember he looked at me, he's like, that's not your B-roll, is it? I'm like, that is my B-roll. He's like, that is horrible.
Yeah.
But we still laugh about it. So, it's funny later.
Exactly, it is.
Keep plugging. I think go for variety. I think to have a number of, say, stories. In this case, if we're talking about a newscast of the day kind of work, to have a number of stories or shows or whatever it might be, whether you're a producer or a reporter type, to show range and depth. So it's not all cops and robbers stories. It's also feature stories or political stories,
Yeah.
more investigative, hard, soft, so that people can see that you have a wider range, I think.
As of, when you were in school getting your degree, what do you think helped you more? Was it more so you focused on your classes, or was it internship experience that you could apply?
Internship experience. I would say, obviously, you need to have the fundamentals. You have to know the rules of journalism, have some understanding of that. But at the end of the day, it's like anything else. Doing it is what's important, and getting some practice and getting comfortable in front of the camera. Because the first job you have, the news director, isn't necessarily going to be as interested in what grades you got in your broadcast journalism school as much as he is this person comfortable on camera? Does he or she seem like they know how to do the job?
Yeah.
That's what's going to matter more than your actual coursework.
I would say, for the role I'm in now, my father, I thought, always gave us really good advice. It was his philosophy that college was too soon to really specialize in what you were going to do. The college wasn't about getting a job per se. You know, that you want to be a really well-educated person who has studied and learned about a wide variety of topics, that you learn how to be a good critical thinker and write well and be very well read in a lot of different areas. And actually, for a news anchor, that is actually very helpful.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of the technical aspects of television news and being a print journalist, you can only learn by doing them. You know, there's a lot of on-the-job training. You know, I don't care where you went to school until you're kind of thrown in to the mix and you're under fire.
Yeah.
You know, you can only learn to get better by doing it. But when there is a huge story or you know, a massive amount of information that you've got to condense into a really understandable story for people, having a really strong liberal arts education, I think, really helped me with
Helped
that.
you out. Okay,
Yeah.
awesome. So you would say more so just making
Yeah,
sure
you
you're
know,
well-rounded.
I think
individual.
so. I think so as an undergraduate, and then certainly lots of people do go to journalism school
Yeah.
or go get a master's in public policy or whatever they do after that. But I was an English major at Boston College. I wasn't
Wow.
even a communications major, and I think and I had a real interest in history, and I think that really has helped me a lot.
Okay.
I would say it was more my classes. So I went to school at the University of Washington in Seattle, and I had such good experiences writing for radio and doing radio reports and writing stories and then doing news reports for the campus TV station.
Yeah.
That I would say that got me more excited than my internship, because the only internship I was able to get was in programming, which was not at all what I wanted to do. And so I would wind up like doing the log of what music was airing, and at one point taking death threats because we weren't going to air a NASCAR race and people were really angry. And so I'd be like, okay, I'll be sure to pass that along. I'm like, that's another one who wants to kill you. You know, and so I would say no, that did not prepare me for my career as well, maybe in the sense that it prepared me to deal with all kinds of viewpoints, but just in terms of getting excited about it, I think that was more just the interest in news, writing, and storytelling.
I think it was both, definitely. But I think the courses that stuck with me the most were the more hands-on ones. So anything where it was a little less academic and a little more practical, I think, were the best ones for me. And I think those are usually the fewest ones because it's hard for a school to afford the equipment, etc.
Yeah.
But I think those were the more practical ones were the best that I might still think about or draw on many years later.
Kids who are college freshmen right now who are looking forward to a career in journalism in the broadcast communications industry, what would you say to them to help them beat the learning curve, kind of get a step up against their peers to kind of take advantage of that?
I'd say read everything you can, and have a really good grasp of language and know how to write well. Know how to write clearly. Like, this is what I want to say, this is how I'm going to say it. And it sounds so simple, but it does take practice.
Yeah.
So I would say any opportunity you can get to put that practice into work is good. I would say get a good internship, find a mentor, discover what it is you like, what interests you, what excites you. And have an idea what you want to do, but be open to possibilities.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think we just get so focused on one thing that we don't see the opportunities that are popping up that might really enhance our lives. And so I would say kind of all of those things. But most importantly, pursue your passion. If that's what you want to do, don't let anybody tell you that it's too competitive or, you'll have to move. You don't care about that. If it's something you really want to do, all of that is worth it.
Try to get as many of those hands-on type courses and internships like you're doing to try and get some active experience, because it's like a catch-22 thing. You can't get the job without experience. You can't get the experience without a job.
Exactly.
So you're kind of stuck. So you have to, probably be in a smaller place.
Okay.
to start out.
Yeah.
It's difficult.
I would say by junior or senior year, that is where internships can really help you out. More so in finding out what you don't want to do as much as what you do want to do. And I did have an internship. I was lucky enough to go abroad in my junior year, and so I was an intern for a member of parliament in London. So I got to really see a lot of the inside politics, and also how journalists covered politics from that experience, and I loved that.
Yeah.
I did think about law school for a little while, because in the mid to late 80s, everybody was going to law school, but I knew that could be a really expensive mistake. So when I first got out of school, I worked as a paralegal for a year to see if I liked sort of the life of a law firm, and I figured out pretty quickly that was not for me. So I think those experiences are great, and it's true when people say failures are not failures, they're your best teachers. Like, you shouldn't look at them as failures, especially when you're very young, that you're trying things, and if it's not for you, that's a good lesson to learn, and then you move on and you go to something else. And I think that's one thing that's really great about young people now is people understand the wisdom of moving to a lot of different jobs or a lot of different careers if they don't find what they like right away. I think once upon a time people sort of settled on one thing and felt they had to do it for 30 years. I don't think that pressure is there as much now. And I think internships are the best way to kind of dive in, get the landscape of a company or a law firm or a TV news station or a newspaper and see if it's for you. You get into a work atmosphere, as you have with this internship, and you sort of ask yourself, are these my people? And it's where you're comfortable. If you do what you are good at, you will probably find someone to pay you to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's really true.
That's extremely true.
Yeah.
I'm here with Amanda Rose, who's also a CBS Boston intern. Now, Amanda, what does this internship really mean for you?
This internship has been incredible because, we're both seniors, we're getting towards the end, of our year, and the one thing that I really wanted was some live production experience. And being an intern at CBS Boston has been really, really incredible for that. We get to be in the studio and in the control room and kind of see everything that happens behind the scenes and then the scenes themselves. So it's been really, really awesome to kind of cap off my college experience.
In terms of being a news anchor, what would you say is one of the most important things that you've learned in the job?
To be prepared. I think being prepared is critical because so often you will have to rely on what you know to provide context for the story. I think you have to accept that you're going to make mistakes and you cannot get undone by that. People make mistakes in life and you apologize or say excuse me and you move on. And you don't let it live in your head too long or it's going to mess everything else up. And I think listening is the other big thing, which no one ever told me, and I don't think I discovered until later in the game, but the idea that when the story is airing or when a reporter is talking, you'll pick up on some of the nuances of a story and the kinds of things that speak to what we all feel. And I think that's where you, as an anchor, can connect with viewers. Just the way you react to what you've heard. Because they're doing the same thing at home.
In terms of, your resume, what does it mean to you to have CBS Boston on that resume, especially such great experience?
Yeah, honestly, it's huge. I mean, I've been starting to look at jobs, and what's really nice is, not only having the name CBS Boston, kind of understanding how a satellite station works within the larger CBS corporation.
That's true, especially CBS for sure, because there's so many different offices around the country.
Right.
So
right, and it kind of, there are privileges with being part of this larger organization, but also in a lot of ways, Boston does feel like a small town.
True.
So the reporters, a lot of them are from around here, and I'm from around here as well. So there is this kind of local community feel that's mixed in with this larger broadcast corporation.
What would you say to someone who's maybe looking, to intern at CBS Boston? What helped you get this position?
Yeah. This was definitely not my first internship, and I think that's the same for a lot of people who work here. So I would say, a lot of what we do here is storytelling, and it's a mix of technical experience of writing and of storytelling. So finding ways to kind of do that to beef up your resume before you apply here is really key. Also having some personal connections. There's nothing better than going on LinkedIn, finding past interns who've worked here, or finding people who are working here now and saying, hey, I'm really interested in what you do. I would love to have a 15-minute phone conversation.
Yeah.
That above anything else can kind of push your resume to the top of the pile.
Mm-hmm. In terms of building your resume, what would you say to, maybe an incoming freshman going into college who has dreams of working for CBS one day? What would you say to them to kind of help beef up their resume?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Definitely use your college's resources. You don't have to go to like a college with a big fancy name to use their alumni connections and to use their career services. Definitely take advantage of what you're paying for and what you're there at the university for. And also the biggest piece of advice that I tell people is just start making things. Don't wait for someone to give you the permission that, okay, you can go film a segment, or okay, you can go try writing a script and try showing it to people. Just start. Your first one's not going to be good, but the only way that you'll make that good one is if you do a first few rounds of just trying things out.
Exactly.
And then, when people tell you, what do you like outside of the classroom? You want to do this, have you tried it? You can say yes, and here are some links, or like yes, and here's some feedback I've gotten. So just having stuff.
Just having something to show for.
Yeah,
exactly.
Never too early to start building your portfolio, and just make things and learn from it.
Mm-hmm. And I know, our internship is almost done here, which is very sad. It's my last day here. Is it your last day as well?
No, tomorrow's my last
Tomorrow's
day.
your last day, and then we have Boston Marathon, so I guess we come back for that.
Oh yeah.
But this is kind of the official last day. How did you like the internship? How was it for you? What did you learn?
It was wonderful. It's definitely made for people who are go-getters, and who are willing to ask questions and to kind of be assertive about what you like and what you don't like and what you want to try, and kind of being self-critical in that certain way. And I think that coming into this internship, those were skills that I had built up, and so getting to apply them here has been fantastic.
Yeah,
and the connections and kind of making like little friendships with the producers.
Yeah, everybody's so nice.
Everyone's so nice. They're able to give you some real life advice, which is important as we head off into the real world.
Exactly, into the real world right after this.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a parting last words of advice to anybody who's, whether they're a small reporter in a smaller market or a college student looking into the industry. What would you say?
I would say learn how to do everything.
Yeah.
Learn how to produce, learn how to shoot, learn how to shoot well, because your first job, if you're doing TV news, you are going to shoot and edit your own material.
Yeah.
And you want your stuff to look good.
Yeah.
So you got to learn how to shoot well, learn how to edit well, because it's your product that you're going to be putting together. And that way, when you start applying for those first jobs, you can say, I can do everything. I can shoot, I can edit, I can produce my own content if need be. I can do sports, I can do politics, I can do the local crime story. Just be willing to try everything and show that first news director that you have curiosity and that you're a go-getter. And that'll take you a pretty long way.
Awesome. Well, Liam, thank you so much. I
course.
really appreciate you taking the time, to really come on video and talk about your experience and give advice. I really appreciate that.
Absolutely. Good luck, everybody.
Any last parting words of advice?
I would just say I think this business is more important than ever. And I think that especially local news is more essential, as huge media companies are really, the national scene is so fractionalized, and people are watching so many different sources for news, but they also have Netflix and Hulu and Amazon Prime and YouTube, and everybody is looking at a different streaming service. If you work for a local newspaper or a local television station, there's going to come a moment, when it's that day when everybody needs to turn on their local news, and that's really what you're working for. The boring Tuesday in March is not going to make or break you, but everything that you're learning and doing to get better is what will be brought to bear on a day like that.
Okay.
When the news story is really important and people really need information, and that's a good thing to always keep in the back of your mind.
Any last parting words of advice?
Change your major. No, just kidding. No, I liked it. Obviously I've been doing it a long time, but I like it. I think it's an interesting and sometimes cool way to make a living. I think the idea of being out of the building a lot is good. Seeing things, seeing people, talking to interesting people. Sometimes it's not fun, but mostly it's interesting.